Hello and welcome back. This is my blog post number 5 for CSC-355. In this video, I'll be covering 3 more missions from my character build. And the first one is Junior Programmer Manage Scene Flow and Data. This was actually the last Junior Programmer mission from my character build. So I felt like it was best to just get it knocked out and then I can focus on the creative core stuff moving forward. So the first couple of things here, first was version control, and second was principles of object-oriented programming. These are all things that we've covered in other classes before. The 4 pillars of object-oriented programming being abstraction, inheritance, polymorphism, and encapsulation. And then you can see I have GitHub for desktop here. I made my initial commit when I started the project, and then another commit after I finished it. But pretty basic stuff there that we've covered before. As same thing with like persistent data. I'm familiar with what that is and why it's important. So I didn't spend a lot of time on this stuff. And I spent a majority of my time with this one in this little project here. So you can see we have a menu here. And so if I'll give a quick demonstration first. So if we click play, you can see red is saved as the color. So if we start, our fork trucks are all red, so we're on the red team. If we click this back to menu, it's not just going to bring us back to the menu, it's actually just going to exit play mode altogether for us. So that's kind of useful. And if we try it again, you can see red is still saved as our color. Let's say if we select green this time and we don't save, we just click start. Now we're done the green team, and then same thing, we can go back to the menu. And now if we go again, it'll still be red because we didn't save anything. But if this time we want to go yellow and then save the color and then start, now you can see it's all yellow fork trucks. We go back to the menu, and then one last time if we go in here. Now if we go in, you'll see yellow was saved because that's what we had saved in the previous session. So pretty cool little thing here. I feel like it's useful to have this on the menu because it will sort of allow you to carry information from one scene to another, whether that be like the player's name that they input at the menu, or like their high score, or their current score throughout the game, or their ultimate all-time like high score, anything like that, that you need to have persistent data either between scenes or between sessions. This kind of taught or covered a little bit of everything. Taking a look at some of the code here, as you can see, it's pretty involved, and I would hate to step through this one line at a time. So I'm just going to give a very high level overview of what's going on. Starting out with the main manager, we have our team color. This is where we save that, as well as our actual functions for saving the color and loading the color. And this is as far as like between sessions. So like it's actually going to save whatever color we choose to a JSON file. And by doing that, that's what, the file will actually be stored. It won't be destroyed. And then we'll just load it up next time the application runs. And then we have our UI for the main scene as well as for the menu. For the menu, we're gonna, again, we're dealing with our colors here, and then we're going to load in the next scene. We also have this note basically to the compiler where if we're in the Unity editor, then we're just going to exit play mode like we saw. If, for instance, we had already published this game, then it wouldn't, exit. It wouldn't have to exit play mode at all. It would just, quit the application. And then you can see we have the same sort of chunk of code here in the main scene. And then again, we're just sort of loading in some of that data that we had from the menu, like in this section here. So that, again, just a high level overview of some of that stuff. Again, pretty important stuff that I'll definitely be implementing in my game for the game jam. So that wraps up the Junior Programmer mission, like I said, and basically the entire pathway from my character build for Junior Programmer and Unity Essentials, all that stuff is done. And now I can focus entirely on Creative Core from this point forward. So to start things off, we have this Introduction to Creative Core mission. Not going to spend too much time with this one. Meet the creators, copyright stuff. We've covered all that before. I will touch on this briefly, the Selector Guided Project. And then we also had the Unity documentation. There was a cool little exercise here where basically they had you go to the Unity website or to the forums. They gave you a specific question and just gave you some practice with finding the answers to the questions that you're looking for. But yeah, anyways, right back to this selector guided project. I decided to select the beachside town. And basically all they wanted you to do for this one was position the cameras. They didn't actually want you to really do anything other than load the scene in and position the cameras. So I have a main camera to sort of capture the entire scene here, a storefront camera, and then a pedestrian camera. And you can see I'll just go in over here, a quick little 360 of the scene. And then let's say we wanted to add another camera to like the back of this shot. If we had our camera in position here, what we can do is create a new camera like this. And let's say we want to name it, you know, backside camera. And then we can drag it into this like cameras folder here. And then what we can do is, let's say we can position it however we want. So let's say we want it to look like this, like anything like this. Okay, now what we can do is there's a quick little trick, game object, move to view, game object, align with view. And that brings our camera exactly where we want it to. So quick little trick there. I found that that works really well. So that's what I did for all these cameras that I've implemented. And yeah, that's just positioned up. I know later on throughout Creative Core, we're going to be playing with this scene a lot, adding effects, doing a lot more stuff. But this just kind of prepares us to, you know, so that we're ready for that, basically. And that covers the introduction. And so that was a nice little segue, I guess, into the cameras mission, which was the next one I decided to go for. Cameras are super important, whether you're the programmer or you're, again, into like the art side of things. You have to know how the cameras are interacting with the different objects and with the environment, and in order to make a game that looks good, basically. I'll just go right on into the camera's mission here. First of all, there was this little scene where I'll just enter play mode and show what's going on here. Basically, this just kind of gives a sample of the different camera options. This is third person view. If we go into the maze here, it'll give us a top down view, which is pretty cool. And I'm not going to go through this entire maze here. I don't really have the time, but basically throughout this entire like this scene here was all about just getting experience with like, well, just showing you the different options for what cameras work best in what situations. Here's first person, here's what that looks like. And I didn't really do anything with this one. I just kind of explored and saw which ones that I thought might be useful for our game. Here's the ortho view. That's really only for 2D games, so I'm not really going to worry about that one too much. A couple of the other ones here, we have the shots scene. This one, pretty straightforward. Again, this one was similar to the guided project that I showed, just positioning cameras different places around, and then you can essentially switch the view of those cameras. Basically just depending on, yeah, I mean, you can move the character around and then, you know, swap the camera and continue on. And that's basically all we did for this mission. So, or for that little scene. Next up, we have the limits scene. So for this one, we have just a solid color in the background, which might look a little bit weird at first, but basically we click on our main camera. Here's where we can select what color we have. And then in this clipping plane, if we change the far value to something like 7, you can see we can't see our character. But if we even up it to something like 10, now we can see it, just a little bit more of our scene every little bit that we go. And then if we do something like 300, obviously we can see almost the entire scene except for in the distant background here. And then, you know, something like 30, just sort of in the middle. Keeps the performance up, and yeah, it still looks pretty good. So you can do the same thing with the near clipping plane, but this was just to demonstrate sort of what that does. And then finally, we have the camera projection scene. So this one was kind of interesting, and a little bit tricky. So it looks a little bit weird, but if we go to the environment, you can see we have this capsule here, which is actually invisible. And the reason it's invisible is because we put this layer 6 rendering mask on there. And so layer 6 right here, you can see we call it culled, the culled layer. And so now if we move over to our main camera, you can see if we go here, we cannot see the culled layer. We have that one blocked off. You can see that little icon there demonstrating that. So now when we go into play mode, actually I'll go just so we can see where it is. As the character sort of walks through here, you can see if you're looking on the bottom screen there, it looks like the character is just walking into nothing, like an invisible wall. We know that there is actually an object there. We just can't see it because it's invisible. But that might be something that's useful to use in my game jam game as well, just because, you know, you don't always want to have these big ugly walls everywhere. Sometimes you would want to do it like this, and that might be a useful thing that I implement later on. And the same is really true for like everything. Like the cameras and the junior programmer managed scene flow, super useful stuff here. But I think that's all I wanted to cover for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the future with more Creative Core missions.